Welcome back to the DSR channel, and I'm going to present the first revision of UA feedback from the community and me trying to put that together. First revision for our proposal for the feedback survey for the Vestige Warlock new subclass. But real quick, I could use some more playtesters for the UA playtest sessions I've set up this week. I even have one tonight, and I love this community that has been building here. Really love engaging with them, and I would love to play with more of you. So if you have time this week, sign up for one of these sessions. Let's play together. Let's try out these UA subclasses together. Now, I'm going to build these UA subclasses in D&D Beyond Homebrew, and I'm going to build them exactly as presented in the UA document. I'm not gonna put any of our revised ideas into the playtest. We're gonna playtest them as is, okay? That way we get the baseline experience of what they're like. So that we can use that to inform us on how we think they should actually be revised when we submit the survey feedback, the feedback surveys in which opens next week, and then we'll have a total of 2 weeks once it opens to submit the feedback. All right, let's get into the details for some revisions for this Vestige Warlock, which is super cool. I think this by far seems to be the most popular of these 4 subclasses, although I'm really interested in all of them. I think they did a great job with all of these. So I'd be tickled pink to play any one of these. All right, let's start with problems to solve first, though, okay? So I think the first problem to solve is infinite resummon in 1 minute with no other resource cost is just too strong relative to the other pet classes. The other pet classes, so the Beastmaster Ranger, the Steel Defender, Artificer, even the Wildfire Druid, they can resummon their pets if they die. The Beastmaster and the Steel Defender both have to, or the Battlesmith both have to spend a spell slot and then 1 minute to get it back. The Wildfire Druid spends a use of Wild Shape, and I think it's just an action. So that's kind of the baseline for these. So this one, just 1 minute, no resource cost, is I think too strong. It allows you to just, after every combat, you can just let it die every combat and then resummon it every combat. Or you don't have to let it die. It's just not a big deal if it does die because you just resummon it. 1 minute is almost never an impediment in an adventure, right? You almost always have a couple of minutes after every combat to finish searching the room, to do some things, Um, but I think it's too expensive to spend a spell slot for the warlock to spend a spell slot because you only have a couple of spell slots from levels 1 to 10. They do come back on a short rest, but that just still feels like too much. And those scale up. So like the Battlesmith Artificer and the Beastmaster Ranger, they can expend a first level spell slot. Your warlock would have to spend their highest level spell slot because that's all they have. It's their highest level spell slot. So it's too expensive. So I started thinking about, well, what are the other resources we can leverage here for the warlock? And I feel like time, because the warlock regains all their spell slots on a short rest. I think time is their other resource. And I thought about making them spend an hour to get this back, but that's like now comes at the expense of getting a short rest, right? So they either get their pet back or they miss an entire short rest, and then a short rest is an important resource to the warlock to get their packed spell slots back. So that felt like too much. So we'll get into that on what I ended up on. Next problem solved. Variety is good, but it can be better. Pedro Pascal's character in Wonder Woman 1984. Variety is good, but it can be better. Vestige powers. Next one. Vestige powers either need to scale up in power or have more uses. Aura of power. Death ward effect is too punishing to use. And the semblance of life is super cool, but too limited in playtime. You're going to have 1 minute for the entire day for this super cool move. Just feels too limited. All right, so here's version 1 of what we've put together from community, community engagement, community involvement, kind of did this all together. All right, so starting off, Vestige imbument. This is an entirely new feature that I guess we are proposing to add so far. I mean, it is kind of hard to not everybody's feedback or often people's feedback is not the same. And I kind of try to boil down the themes of the feedback and try to coalesce it into one thing that kind of like meets the goals of all the feedback I got for that thing that's related to that thing. And remember, the idea here is that we are going to craft this. I'll come up with something that we mostly agree on. We're going to have to compromise, right? Because we are never going to have everybody agree on everything. Never. Even if there's just 10 of us. But the idea is here, get stuff that we mostly agree on, and then you can use this in your feedback to WotC in the survey, right? And you don't have to put everything as is here. If you like, everything but one sentence, you can put all of that in as is, and then the one sentence you change. Just keep in mind that the more you change, the less impact your voice is going to have in the survey. All right, the more all of our feedback matches, the more impact our voice will have. All right, level 3, Vestige Imbument. This is a new one. So you can use a holy symbol as a spellcasting focus. Multiple people suggested that. I think it's a great idea. Totally makes sense. Very thematic and flavorful here. So yeah, there you go. I also thought, this is just, nobody gave this feedback, but I thought religion. Let's give them proficiency in religion. And if you already have proficiency in religion, you can just choose another skill from the Warlock class list. And third, while the vestige is present, meaning it's summoned and I don't know, close to you-ish, maybe a 30-foot. We're going to think about that. Give your comments and thoughts on that. I'm just going to leave it as present to keep it kind of high level right now. You can cast one of the level 1+ spells that you have prepared from your Vestige Spells feature without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you do so again. So I just basically copied that from the Land Druid. Felt thematic, felt flavorful. You've got your god right there. You're getting some divine powers from it. Just felt like it made sense that you should be able to cast one of those spells as well. So you can cast it a little more often, and it will feel less punishing, right? To cast, say, one of those first level spells you get from your Vestige spells. And you can cast it as a first level spell using this without expending a packed spell slot. All right, so kind of some small stuff there. I think that'll feel cool, but I don't think it's going to be highly impactful. It's kind of like a low-level Mystic Arcanum for you. On to the Vestige Companion. This is the biggest one, okay? And all right, so keep everything as is, but with these modifications. So like we're not removing anything. First up, the ritual to resummon it is 10 minutes instead of 1 minute. I feel like that was a decent compromise. You don't always have 10 minutes after every combat, so maybe there'll be times you just can't guarantee you're going to be able to summon this. I feel like with 1 minute, you can almost guarantee 99% of the time that you'll just be able to resummon this. Yes, I know that there are those niche situations where you're in the middle of a chase or in the middle of something trying to escape, and you don't have 1 minute after every combat. That's super niche, but it does happen. It's just very, very rare. But 10 minutes, I feel like that won't always happen, but it will often happen. Somewhere between 50 and 75% of the time, you do have 10 minutes after a combat. And not just that, if other people have duration effects going, spell duration effects going, 10 minutes is going to eat into that. 1 minute is going to barely eat into that. 10 minutes is going to eat into that a decent chunk, right? So there'll be a trade-off there where it's like, and that makes it a meaningful decision. Like, ooh, do we burn, the cleric cast Spirit Guardians? That's going to end if you resummon your thing. So do we need it more than we need the cleric Spirit Guardians spell? Maybe, maybe not. All right, so 10 minutes. Let me know your thoughts on that one in the comments. All right, so with so what I did as well, so there was a few people who replied with this, which I thought was a fantastic idea. Why not let them have all of the creature types where there is a summon spell for that creature type for your Vestige? I like it. Cool idea. So we're going to lean into that. So now your creature type can be that you choose for your Vestiges: Aberration, Beast, Celestial, Construct, Dragon, Elemental, Fey, Fiend, Undead. So you can choose any of those as your Vestige creature type. And each one has some associated damage types. And so what I did was, some people, and I got some feedback from some people saying like it's weird to just be able to change your Vestige's creature type every long rest. Okay, I think you should be able to change it sometimes because maybe it's just not playing the way you want it, or your character started to develop in a different direction for theme and flavor. So what I've done is said, your Vestige there can be multiple damage types in there. If it has multiple damage types, the damage it deals and its resistance, you choose one from the list of damage types allowed, and you can change that one whenever you take a long rest. So if you choose Aberration, right, it allows acid and psychic damage. You could swap those whenever you take a long rest. You still have an Aberration Vestige, but you choose the damage type, and you can swap that damage type with every long rest. And then I change it to every time you gain a Warlock level, you can change your Vestige creature type to something else entirely. And that I feel like splits the difference, right? You can change it sometimes. You don't need to change it every long rest, because that's changing the creature type is almost like changing to a different god's Vestige. All right, so that's kind of the theme of the whole thing. So then I'll go through every one of these creature types, and I'll just talk about the damage type that are listed with it, and then some modifications to the divine power, because I feel like the divine power, the direction I went with this one was to make the divine power more powerful and scale better, as opposed to giving it more uses. But I could go the other way. Let me know in the comments, your thoughts on that. So I'm gonna go through these. Some of these I did kind of quick and dirty, and I could tell that I was kind of like my creative juices were starting to run dry. So I just threw something out there for some of these. I don't love every one of these. So hopefully this will just kind of like inspire you with some creativity, and then you all can comment and give some better ideas for some of these, particularly like the dragon and elemental. Like those are so similar. I'm disappointed in their current state, but hopefully this just again inspires some creativity, and you can all come up with something better. So first one, aberration. So it's got 2 damage types available, acid and psychic. Its divine power would be like a Hunger of Hadar effect that lasts only 1 minute, no concentration, and the radius is smaller. The radius is a 5-foot radius that scales with your charisma modifier. So if you get a +3 charisma modifier, which you should at this level, um, then that would be a 15-foot radius, which is maybe too big. I don't know. And then it would scale to, if you have +5 charisma modifier, it'd be a 25-foot radius, which is now really big. I don't know. Beast. The damage types are bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So you choose any one of those. That's the damage type that your beast vestige does, and the damage type it is resistant to. You can switch those on a long rest. Its divine power is when you use it, it gains the effect of everything but the ability score increase from the crusher, piercer, or slasher feat for 1 minute. And of course, that would be, you'd choose, I mean, you could technically choose any one of those you want, but you would choose Crusher if the damage type is bludgeoning, and you would choose Piercer if the damage type is piercing, and you would choose Slasher if the damage type is slashing. Celestial, radiant damage, that's the same. Divine power, keep it all as is, but instead of 2d8 plus your charisma modifier for the scaling, let's change it to a number of d8s equal to your charisma modifier as the scaling. It should start off, the average healing would be about the same at 3rd level, and then scale higher when you get, a +4 and a +5 to your charisma modifier. Construct. The only damage type for this one is bludgeoning, and I just went with that based off of the damage that it does in the summon construct spell. That's all bludgeoning. Its divine power is it gains your warlock level plus charisma modifier in temporary hit points, and it gains resistance to poison, psychic, and piercing and slashing damage for 1 minute. So it already had bludgeoning resistance. Now it's going to have resistance to piercing and slashing. It's also going to be resistant to poison and psychic. So it gains a bunch of damage types that are very common, except I guess psychic's not that common, but it still happens for 1 minute. So this makes it a very tanky option. I thought that was a cool way to go with the construct. Dragon. Yep, choose acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, as you'd expect. And of course, it's a cone. Sorry, this is elemental. So it's not a cone. What this one is like an AoE blast that you can choose at range. So it's kind of like the effect of a fireball, right? Range is 60, so not quite the same range as the fireball. Sphere radius is 10 feet, so a little bit smaller than the fireball. Damages a number of d8s equal to your charisma modifier. Fade. This one is psychic only. The divine power is it casts Nether's mischief spell, which is a level 2 spell. The cube size, though, is smaller and it scales up with your charisma modifier. So by default, the spell's cube is 20 feet. At level 3, you'll be, probably a +3. So we're talking a 15-foot cube, so slightly smaller, but it'll scale up to a cube of 25 feet, so slightly larger. And if there's Mischief is a pretty cool spell. It's a good control spell. And it's very thematic for Fae, I thought. Then we've got the Fiend. This one was already in there. I set its damage types to cold, fire, or poison because that is the themes of a lot, of the variety of planes where the fiends reside, the abyss, the hells, the adjacent planes. So keep everything else as is from the divine power, but have it give it a thunder step kind of effect where it deals damage. I thought in this case that would be better since you are swapping places with your vestige. I didn't want to hard code it so that it only deals damage at the place you leave. So you can choose either the place you leave or the place you arrive for the damage effect to occur. The damage effect will be a number of d8s equal to your charisma modifier, trying to lean into that theme. And this one will also cause a cloud effect. So if you're, and I'll just call it a cloud effect, but the idea would be you flavor that based off of your fiend's current damage type. So if the fiend's damage type is fire, this might be a cloud of smoke that lasts for 1 round. If your fiend's damage type is cold, this might be a swirling snowstorm blizzard kind of effect that just creates, that obscures vision. And if you're poison, it's a poisonous cloud effect, right? It's not going to have any additional effect. It's basically going to have the effect of a fog cloud. You just flavor it as for what it looks like that way. And last but not least is the undead. This one's going to be necrotic as it was before. And keep the divine power as is, but add this where the target takes necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier at the start of each of its turns. So no save on that. In fact, no save on any of this. You just do it, and that creature's going to take your charisma modifier in necrotic damage at the start of each of its turns. Just done. For one round, that's not a lot of damage, but you're talking 10 rounds of automatic damage. So that's 10 times your charisma modifier in damage if it lasts all 10 rounds, right? If the creature doesn't die first. So you're talking 30 to 50 damage scaling. Now that's the maximum potential again, but that's on top of the curse effect, which is pretty good. All right, sorry about that. I just realized that I jumbled up the dragon and elemental when I was talking through those. Sorry. Yeah, things just going on really fast here. Sometimes I get jumbled up. So the dragon is really acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, which is all the same damage types that the chromatic and metallic dragons can deal. So same. And what that one does is a cone effect. The elemental one is cold, fire, lightning, thunder. And the effect is an AoE blast where you choose the radius, and it's a sphere effect that occurs at a range that you choose. The dragon's cone increases based on your charisma modifier. The sphere radius of the elemental does not change, so it's always 10 feet. So it's always kind of a smaller effect than the fireball spell, and both of them have the same damage. The damage is a number of d8s equal to your charisma modifier. So there's the difference between those two. And those are the two I think I was most disappointed in how they turned out. Like, it's just, always, I feel like we always go with a cone effect for dragon. It just makes sense. It's thematic and it's the damage types, yes, but it's now we've done that how many times in the game? There's the spell, there's the species, there's the so many things that do that. It's multiple subclasses that do that kind of a thing. Anyway, I hope you have better ideas for differentiating these two, making them more interesting, more unique. I'll be looking for some good comments in the good ideas in the comments of this video. Moving on to vestige spells. Yes, this one was almost perfect as is. Very cool idea. Wish they had done this with the Divine Soul Sorcerer. Let you choose the cleric domain, and that's the list of spells you get. The only change is, of course, allow any domain. Don't hard code us to the domains from the player's handbook, please. Level 6, Vestige Recovery. All right, this one did feel too weak. So I'm going to add a little bit to it, which is keep it as is, but we're going to add that the Vestige now can cast one of the spells from your Vestige spell list once per day. Maybe that should come back more often. I don't know. It's kind of a small thing, but so now you can cast one of those spells once per day without expending spell slot, and it can cast one of those spells once per day without expending spell slot. I was a little bit worried about too much power creep, and I kind of liked it that the Warlock could do it, and I do like that the Vestige could do it, which is why I didn't increase the number of casting the Vestige gets of that to more than once per day. But let me know in the comments what you think, or if you have better ideas for how to scale that up. Level 10, the Aura of Power. And many of you might have been thinking like, oh, the Aura of Power, that's, or sorry, not the damage types, right? If you don't have 3 damage types, then what are you going to do with the Aura of Power? All right, here's what I came up with. So the Aura of Power, keep everything as is, but since the Aura of Power gives resistance to 3 damage types, and in the version in the UA, it's the Fire, Necrotic, and Radiant, right? Which is the same damage types that all of the, or any one of the damage Vestige creature types could do. Obviously, I couldn't do that because I used almost every damage type now. I think I did use every single damage type except Force in that list. So what I did is say, if your list, the list of damage types for your Vestige doesn't have 3, then you can choose from Force, Psychic, or Poison until you reach 3. And it's your choice. You don't have to go in that order, right? I guess you could choose every time you activate it. So if you choose the Construct, which has 1 damage type, Bludgeoning, then you could choose Force and Poison, or you could choose Force and Psychic, or you could choose Psychic and Poison in addition to the Bludgeoning resistance. And that, of course, still applies normally in the same way it would, which is the whole party or everybody in that aura gets those 3 damage resistances as well. Okay? And then the Death Ward effect, cool idea. I like the idea. This is one of the better Death Ward effects that I've seen on a subclass. Like, it's a real big bummer when that's your whole subclass feature you get at that level. So in this case, it's kind of the secondary rider. And it makes sense, except that I do agree it was too punishing, as in not being able to bring back your Vestige for the rest of the day is a big hit. So I think we need a way to bring it back. But I do think it should cost you more. All right, so in this case, I do think it's worth a packed spell slot. So if you lose your Vestige this way and you can't resummon it, then you can expend a packed spell slot to get it back. And once you've done that, now it's back to the 10-minute usual ritual to bring it back every time. So if it dies again, or you lose it again because of this, so you've used this a second time, which I don't know if you could, right? Because the aura can only be manifested once per day. And presumably when it is dismissed this way, the aura is dismissed. That would be my idea. I didn't explicitly write that in here, but that's what I would say is like, it's the aura of power has ended. It's been dismissed. You can't activate the aura of power again. So you don't need to worry about, well, what if they do this death ward effect again? Because you can't activate aura of power again. But you at least get the rest of your subclass features by having your Vestige around, and you're back now to do the 10-minute ritual to just bring it back again normally. You just don't have another use of Aura of Power. Felt like a good compromise to me. Finally, Semblance of Life. This is your big, super cool Super Saiyan right feature where it goes into big power mode, which I think is very cool, very thematic, mechanically fun, because they scaled it up as they should, instead of like the Draconic Soul Sorcerer or Draconic Sorcerer and the other ones where they, their capstone is you get a cast summon dragon, but it's still 5th level, right? But you're a 14th level sorcerer, so it's actually lower level than what you're normally casting the summon dragon. So that's a bummer. I wish they had done this with that one. All right, so they just did this one right, which is you cast it once without expending a spell slot, but its effective spell level is half your warlock level rounded down. So you can get up to a 9th level summon out of this. Perfect, love it. The problem is you get 1 minute of playtime with it, of in-game playtime with it for the whole day. And this is your super cool feature, and it's very fun, and 1 minute just isn't enough for your very super cool feature. So instead of giving it more, and I could have either gone with you get more uses somehow by like expending 2 packed spell slots or something like that. In this case, I went with, let's just make it a 1 hour duration. You still only do it once per day. It's now 1 hour. So you might be able to get it into multiple fights depending on how you spend your time. So that's the big important resource. And you'll need to spend more resources to make sure you keep it alive, because this thing is cool and powerful, except they only have on average 10 hit points per spell slot level. So you're talking it's going to have 70 to 90 hit points, which sounds like a lot, but not in tier 3 and 4. That is not a lot. So these things die pretty fast. So you're going to have to expend more resources to make sure you keep it alive for the whole hour, whether that's administering potions to it, or you went with the domain of life, so you got some heal spells, or whatever your strategy is, you're keeping it alive. And that felt like a good trade-off, right? You got to spend some resources to keep the super powerful thing around. So 1 hour. And one last change I squeaked in there, which is, and I felt like it wasn't entirely clear. I think their intention is your Vestige, when it goes into this mode, the entire stat block is replaced, which means it no longer has access to this divine power. And that didn't feel right to me. So I just added this note, which says, even though it's changed that stat block and everything else changes to the summon creature stat block, it retains this divine power, and it retains that spell casting feature that we gave it from Vestige Recovery. So it can still cast its that one of the spells from your Vestige spell list once per day if it hasn't used it yet, and it still retains the ability to use its divine power in that mode. So 2 small tweaks there. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Again, please put one top level comment for yourself, and have that one be, here's, do you like the whole thing? How much do you like this whole package overall? And it could be perfect printed as is, or it could be pretty good, need some changes. And if you say that, then under that one, reply to your own comment and put in more comments, one per feature, that says, okay, for this feature, this level feature, I propose this change, whether it's change the name, change the mechanics, change whatever. Okay. Please do that. It helps with the organization of this. So far, only one person has done that, and it helps so much. So please do that. All right, I got the links to everything in the description, so you should have everything you need there. That's that's all I got for this one. So I'm looking forward to the creative juices flowing, getting really good input and ideas from this community, which has been awesome so far, and I expect that to continue. Um, Thanks for watching. Remember to be cool when you play D&D because it's a game, and the only point of it is to have fun with people. Okay, and these people are your friends, or they could become your friends. Catch you next time.